Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas!
Wow, I cannot believe we are already a week into December. How much longer do you have before Christmas break? My kids only have a little over a week of school before their break begins. So, anyways, welcome to episode 40 of the Upper Elementary Simplified podcast. I am so excited that you are here with me for this final episode of 2023. Today, I'm doing something special to celebrate a few things. So, on December 20th, my husband and I will be celebrating our 20th wedding anniversary. And then in the spring, we will both be turning 40. So, we've kind of been saying that we are celebrating our 2040. So, in honor of this celebration of these two important milestones in my life, I decided to celebrate the 40th episode of the podcast with 20 inspiring stories from the classrooms of some of my teacher friends. These amazing teacher authors and I have recently teamed up to bring you Santa's Grab Bag for Teachers. This event kicked off this morning and will be live through next Thursday, December 13th. We wanted to spread some Christmas cheer, so we decided to put together some of our favorite resources and package them all up for you to grab for free. In addition to the free gifts, we have also each chosen two or three of our favorite resources and discounted their regular price for this event. This means that from now through December 13th, you can grab 20 free resources and shop over 50 sale resources. And these are all for upper elementary classrooms. To find out how to sign up for this event, head to upperelementarysimplified.com/grab bag. And that is upperelementarysimplified.com/GRABBAG. Okay, so there are two B's in there. And that link will also be in the show notes for you to go directly to the page. The best part about this is that you can browse the gifts we have available, sign up for the ones you want, and just pass on the ones that you don't need right now. On top of the resources that were contributed to this event, each teacher author also submitted a story from their time in the classroom. Some stories are funny, some are heartfelt, all of them are inspiring. I gave these friends of mine the option to either send me a voice recording of themselves telling their story or a typed out story that I would then tell for them. So you're going to be getting a mixture of both. But before we get to the 20 stories, in case you didn't do the math on my milestone 2040, I am having a 20th wedding anniversary a few months before I turn 40. So, yes, I got married when I was basically a baby, but he was my high school sweetheart. We dated for 4.5 years before we got married, and we are happier now more than ever. I know that that sounds cliche, but it is true. So let's go ahead and get into the inspiring stories from this amazing group of teachers. This first story comes from Abby Allen from Art Venturous Animals. And she says, Miss Abby, I'll be right back. I saw my online third grade student exit the screen and chuckled. She was always grabbing extra art supplies to make our science projects even better. But this time, she came back with a jar, glitter, and water. I'm going to make my own habitat. We had just been discussing hammerhead sharks and what habitat fits them best. I had an art inspired project ready to go, but this was better. Because of the open ended, art inspired style of teaching I take, my student was able to be creative. She was able to learn on her own terms and truly grasp the material in a hands on way. And yes, she aced the exit ticket assessment at the end of the project lesson. That's the magic of art-inspired learning.
Hey everybody, this is Heather from Hojo's Teaching Adventures. I am from South Dakota, and I just wanted to tell you one of my favorite stories about teaching and hopefully inspire you a little bit and remind you that what you do makes a difference. So, rewind to my second teaching position, and I am at lunch duty. I was actually a Title I in reading recovery teacher at the time. And if you know anything about reading recovery, you know you generally work with students for a semester. So first semester, I've worked with 4 students primarily, and then also done my other duties within Title I. And second semester rolls around, and one of my girls runs up to me, a first grader, after lunch, and she opens up, again, it's South Dakota, and it's like January, February, I don't remember exactly, but she runs up and she opens her coat and she's like, "Look what I've got." And I'm like, "What's in there, honey?" And she's like, "I took crackers." And I was like, "Wait, honey, you can't take crackers from the lunchroom. That's stealing. You can't do that." And she starts sobbing. "I have to take them. I have to. My baby sister hasn't eaten in 2 days, and I don't want her to get sick." And I mean, even now telling this story, like I just got goosebumps, my heart dropped. And I was just like, "Honey, okay, take the crackers. It's okay. It's okay. Here's what we're going to do. Put the crackers in your backpack, or, keep them in your pocket there. Don't show any other teachers. Don't show any other kids. That's for you. Please don't take more food from the lunchroom. I'll help you get this figured out. But take them home and feed your sister." And she wiped away her tears, gave me a huge smile, gave me a huge hug, and ran off. Now, this was, at the time, there were 3 children from that family in the school. There were 5 children in the home, 3 children in the family. So there was an older sister, this first grader I just told you about, and then a little brother. Fast forward to the next school year, I was moved from title into kindergarten, and I have the little brother now. And I honestly don't even know the gender of the younger 2 at home. There was one sister, but I don't know if it was 2 sisters. Anyway, so this little boy had just told me numerous times, like, "There's no food. My little sister hasn't eaten." And I had been in talks with the principal, and we had done what we could for them as a district. This was also at a time where students were being bused 50 miles each way to our school. Their parents were choosing to send them out of district. They were open enrolling them to our public school. But Christmas time rolls around, and this boy is just telling me, he's like, I don't know what we're going to do. I eat at the school 10 times a week because they would get breakfast and lunch. I don't know what we're going to do. And that was like, a lot of times when I was growing up in South Dakota and then teaching, we had like kind of a 8 to 10 day Christmas vacation. Well, this was going to be like almost a 2-week chunk. I don't know if it was 12 days, 15, whatever, but he was legitimately scared. He's like, "I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know what we're going to do. Mommy's gone a lot," which, was outside of my control. But I was like, "Buddy, we'll get you." So talk to the principal, and we had done basically everything we could. But what I ended up doing is I spent $40 of my own money. And for the 3 days prior to school getting out, we sent a bag home, or I sent a bag home with this little boy, and I had him put a bag of food into his backpack, and we talked about it. And I said, "Buddy, what are you going to do with this?" He's like, "Well, I can't show Mom. She'll sell it or she'll give it away." "Okay, so what are we going to do? What are you going to do when you get it home?" He's like, "I'm going to hide it under my bed. And every day I'm going to get out just a little bit and I'm going to feed my babies." I was like, "Okay. And what about," he's like, "I'll tell my big sisters. I trust them. But we're going to make sure we have food." And he's like, "We'll only eat a little every day. And I made a calendar so I don't run out of food. And so we know how many days until school comes back. But I'll keep it safe. I'll keep it safe." And he went home for Christmas with 3 bags full. I mean, $40 in groceries, for 2023 isn't a lot, but this was like 15 years ago. So bought a decent amount of groceries. And I prayed for him a lot over Christmas break. I was really worried. Yeah, this is where I get a little emotional. When he came back for Christmas, he ran up to me the first day and he was like, Miss, we didn't go hungry this year. And I said, what, buddy? He's like, it was the first Christmas where we weren't hungry. And it's because you gave us enough to eat. And I just hugged him back with tears in my eyes. And he was the happiest little boy that day. He still to this day is one of my all-time favorite students. So much so that I actually named someone I love after him. And yeah, it just $40 and a little bit of food made such a difference for that little boy and his 4 siblings. So I just want to encourage you today that what you do, and it doesn't have to be I'm not saying to go out and spend money out of your own pocket. I was in a place where I could do that at the time, but what you do for these students makes such a difference and is so incredible and so heartwarming, and it matters. What you do matters so much. So thank you. Thank you for being a teacher. Thank you for caring about your students. Thank you for getting them the tools and resources they need, both from an academic standpoint and just from a human standpoint. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Jen from Massachusetts. I was working in a preschool classroom early on in my teaching career. I was sitting at a center with a little girl, and we were making shapes out of dough and chatting while we worked. It was a hot day, and I was wearing a short sleeve shirt. Out of nowhere, she reached over and rubbed my arm and says, you have hairy arms, just like my daddy. It took me a moment, and I finally said, oh, thank you. She sweetly smiled up at me. I had never seen this little girl's father until a few days later, when, I kid you not, the hairiest man I have ever seen in my life showed up to pick up this child. His arms were so hairy that the hairs were coming out of the bottom of his shirt. It was that day that I vowed to take care of my hairy arms and knew that if I were going to be working with children, that I would need to develop a thicker skin.
It's funny how brutally honest kids can be. This next story comes from Emily Upton from Teach Like a Pangolin. Emily's story says, my second year teaching, we didn't have air conditioning and it was hot in August in my second floor classroom. One of my kiddos brought in glazed donuts for his birthday, so I set them on the floor behind my desk to pass out at lunch. By the time lunch rolled around, we had a literal river of donut glaze flowing across the floor. After that, I always made a plan to do birthday treats early in the day.
My name is Blake Yedwab from Yedwab Academics. I've been teaching for 20 years. For 14 years, I taught 3rd grade and then made the jump to 4th grade, and that's where I am today. My story takes place probably about 15 years ago. Around the holidays, I like to do a favorite family recipe activity where each student gets to share a favorite family recipe. It can be anything, not necessarily for the holidays. I've done it different ways, different years. This particular year, I had the students share their favorite family recipe during morning meeting. So between Thanksgiving and winter break, 3 students each day would tell us about their favorite family recipe, and if they wanted, they could bring it in for us to try. They really loved to do this, and it was super fun to learn about each other's families through food. That year, I had a boy in my class who really struggled socially. It was difficult for him to relate to the other kids, and he didn't really have many friends. The other kids were nice to him and always included him, but maintaining friendships was a big challenge for him. Well, it was his turn to share his favorite family recipe, and the recipe he chose to share was for kasha varnishkis. Now, if you've never heard of or had kasha varnishkis, consider yourself lucky. It's awful. At least whenever I had it as a kid, it was awful. It tasted awful and it smelled awful. It's a Jewish Eastern European dish. The name is Yiddish for buckwheat with bow ties. And that's what it is. Buckwheat groats cooked with onions and chicken fat and served with bow tie pasta. Just hearing the name makes my stomach turn. And I thought, oh my goodness. Already, the other kids think he's a little weird, and he's going to bring in kasha varnishkis to share as his favorite family recipe? Really? Part of me wanted to suggest that he bring in something else, but then I thought, no, this is about him and his favorite family recipe. If this is what it is, then this is what it is. So it's his turn to share, and he tells everyone about kasha varnishkis. No one had ever heard of this dish. And his mom and I proceed to serve everyone a small bowl of food. I'm literally holding my breath while the kids start to try it. I'm so worried about the reaction. I'm just waiting for kids to spit it out, say it's gross, anything that would show how much they dislike this dish. But that's not what happens. I start to hear kids say how much they like it, that it's delicious. Can they please have another helping? And I'm shocked. They like it. And it ended up being a fantastic experience for this particular boy, one that I hope he remembers fondly and certainly differently than I do.
Hi, my name is Marcy from California and teaching 6th grade. We were talking about vowels one day in 6th grade, and a student asked me why we say vowel movement to describe a bodily function, and we also call different letters of the alphabet vowels. I had to explain the difference between vowel and vowel, and that the letters B and V often sound alike. Of course, laughter ensued.
This next story is told by Pam Grzinski from Pam's Place.
One school year, I had a unique mission for my 5th grade students, learning 50-plus prepositions by singing them to a familiar tune. The classroom buzzed with anticipation. The lyrics, a list of 56 prepositions, were put before students. Students thought, is she really going to make us learn sing 56 prepositions? Yes, I was. Students sang along, partnered or independently, to the catchy tune. The room filled with music as students began to sing the preposition song. Aboard, about, above, across. How could a list of 56 prepositions catch on like wildfire? It was contagious, and for some, it did not go away the next unit or even the next school year. It stuck with them years later. Students would come back and visit, and this one song was brought up over and over, and it wasn't even a top 100 on any music chart. One former student with a passion for music has gone on to write and create music. His talent and determination continue to blow me away. Now, I know there is no scientific correlation between that one tune we sang that one year, years ago, and his current success in the music industry, but it is an experience that I can say I knew him when. As educators, we may never fully comprehend the far-reaching impact of our teaching methods and the memories we create for our students. But let this be a reminder that even the simplest, out-of-the-box lessons can leave a lasting imprint on our students.
Hey there, my name is Laura, and on TBT, I am Happy Teacher, Happy Students. One of my favorite classroom stories, and I tend to tell this to new teachers, was a unique classroom management technique that I used one day. It was a couple days before Christmas vacation, so kids are a little excited, a little unruly at times, and I think I was trying to get through a math lesson. And there was just a lot of talking, just normal kid activity. And instead of getting upset, I simply just sat down on the floor, up by the whiteboard. Didn't say a word. I just stopped my lesson and I sat down on the floor, crisscross applesauce. And it was very quick that the kids realized something's weird here. Mrs. Fogel's just sitting on the floor. And once it quieted down, it only took a couple seconds. I just stood back up and continued teaching like nothing had happened. And it was so much nicer for me. I wasn't getting upset. I wasn't having to give out behavior tickets or anything like that for people that were off task. I just sat down, didn't say a word, got up when they were quiet. And I've told friends that who are teaching are still in the classroom. And I've had some of them use it and they said, yeah, it's amazing how often it works. I mean, you can't do it every time. The kids won't do it anymore. But it was just a very simple and quiet way to get a class full of kids that are excited for Christmas presents to calm down a bit so you can finish a math lesson. Hope that helps somebody out there. Happy teaching.
Hi there, my name is Brooke and I am an educator from Texas. I have a story to share that is one that I will absolutely never forget. So during my first year teaching, I had joined a new team, and something that they had done every year was a Thanksgiving feast with the students. Now, the students had the opportunity to sign up for something to bring, as it was a potluck style event. This was also pre-COVID, so the learners were able to either purchase something, get something like catered, or they could make it themselves. So we divided up the class responsibilities. We had some classes bringing appetizers, some bringing main dishes, side dishes, desserts, drinks. All of those kinds of things were split up. So within my class, we were the appetizers group. So I created a Sign Up Genius to send out to families with lists of recommended items that they could bring for appetizers. Things like cheeses, dips, chips, things like that. Well, one of the items on the list was to bring a cheese ball and crackers. So one of those cheese balls that's, made of cream and you dip the crackers in it as like a little snack, right? Well, one of my students signed up for that, and I was super excited because that was one of my favorite appetizers actually to have. Now, we did include pictures and or more specific details to help families out with specifically what we were looking for. But for this item, I didn't have any extra information other than just cheese ball with crackers. So I don't think much about it, and the day of our Thanksgiving feast arrives, and we're all super excited. We're setting up the table. We fill up this table all the way down the hallway, and it is just filled with tons of food. We have like 100 kids that come through, and it's buffet style, and it was incredible. Well, my learner who had signed up for the cheese ball and crackers shows up to school with a huge tub of cheese balls, like almost like the chip version, if you know what I'm talking about, those cheese puff cheese balls, and a box of Ritz crackers. And it took me a second to realize what it was. I was a little confused, and then it hit me, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is my cheese ball and crackers. So my most favorite example of some miscommunication created the greatest laughs. We still talk about it to this day. Almost every staff member on our campus ended up knowing about just this little mix-up. And the great news is cheese balls are a hit. And so no matter what it was, the students loved it. They had no idea it wasn't what we had imagined. And the event was still a wonderful success. But it is absolutely a story that I will never forget.
This next story is told by Kristen Higdon of All That Teacher Sparkle.
So I think my favorite Christmas memory in the classroom is watching my students buy Christmas presents for their family members at our annual Christmas Dojo auction. The entire school year, my kids earned dojo points, as many as they could, to be able to buy things at our Christmas auction. And they worked so hard all year long to have really excellent behavior so they could earn as many points as possible. And when it came time to be able to buy these presents, the joy on their faces, the pride that they felt at being able to buy a present for their family members was just precious. You had these like really tough boys who wanted to buy teddy bears for their little sisters. You had these super quiet, shy kids who got crazy excited because of the cool present they got to buy for their dad. And so it was just really precious watching these kids be so selfless and think of making other people happy. They also really loved getting to wrap the present on their own as well, because we provided tape and bows and gift wrap, and they felt so grown up. And of course, when they came back after Christmas break, they got to tell how they felt on Christmas Day when their friend or parent or whoever opened the present that they bought them, and every kid always had this giant smile on their face. So I know that all that hard work was completely worth it to see the joy and happiness on their faces. It's definitely the best memory.
Now you're going to hear from Michelle McDonald from Strategic Educational Services.
So, a little while back, I thought I would jump onto the classroom bandwagon and give flexible seating a whirl. So, I stocked up on some vintage gliders for brain breaks. I added some hip cafe tables and chairs, and I even threw in a bunch of yoga balls for seating. So picture this memorable day. I was helping a student at their desk when I had this genius idea. Instead of getting down on my knees or doing a fancy bend over move, which absolutely kills my back, I thought, well, I'll just grab that bright blue yoga ball to sit on. Ha! Well, as I gracefully attempted to lower myself onto the yoga ball, it turns out I somehow missed the memo on proper yoga ball seating etiquette. I didn't quite get myself situated properly, and before I knew it, I was literally gone. I toppled over backwards faster than a squirrel on roller skates. Luckily, there was a wall nearby which caught my fall, and of course, the classroom erupted into a fit of giggles. So thank the teacher gods, though, that on that particular day, I somehow had the brilliant foresight to wear leggings under my dress. Let's just say I've come to the conclusion that flexible seating is not my thing. And so, my fellow educators, a word of advice. If you dare to venture into the wild world of flexible seating, always, and I mean always, make sure you're rocking some shorts or leggings under that stylish dress of yours, because you never know when the yoga ball gods might decide to play a little prank on you.
Next up is a story from Julianne Samayoa from Heart to Heart Teaching. Julianne says, "This is one of my favorite classroom memories. When I taught second grade, every Friday we had a special tradition where 2 students got to bring in something for show and tell. The kids looked forward to sharing their favorite treasures from home. One unforgettable Friday, a sweet, introverted little girl walked into my class carrying an unusually large box. When it was finally her turn for show and tell, she had a mysterious smile on her face. She was beaming with excitement and pride, made her way to the front of the classroom. As she slowly opened the box, a HUD fell over the students. To everyone's surprise, especially mine, she pulled out a real live snake. Gasps echoed throughout the classroom, and I jumped back in surprise. She started her presentation. "This is Samuel. He's a corn snake, and he's my pet. I found him in our backyard a few days ago and decided to bring him for my show and tell." The class remained frozen with shock. She explained how Samuel was harmless and how she took care of him, treating him like a beloved family member. After I recovered from the initial shock, I laughed and told her, "Well, that was certainly an unexpected surprise, but thank you for sharing Samuel with us. You've certainly made this a show and tell we'll never forget." That day, everyone, including myself, learned much more than we'd bargained for about snakes. And her memorable show and tell went down in second grade history. From that day forward, it was decided that a new policy would be enforced. To ensure the safety and comfort of all students, I announced that all show and tell items were to be inanimate. This meant no more live animals in the classroom, much to the relief of some and the disappointment of others. While the students understood the need for this rule, we couldn't help but look back throughout the school year and laugh about the day that our friend had brought a snake and turned our ordinary classroom into an unexpected wildlife adventure.
Hello there, my name is Tina and I am from Colorado. I just wanted to share my little teacher story with you. I came to teaching a little bit later in life. It was my second career after being an accountant for many years. And my first teaching assignment was kindergarten, and I was not ready for that at all, but ended up absolutely falling in love with all my little kiddos. My favorite story is sitting around the reading center. We were doing centers, sitting around the reading table, and one of my little ones just takes off reading, and she's reading her little decodable like it was nothing. And I remember when she stopped, I looked at her and I said, "Who taught you that?" And she had a big smile and she looked at me and she said, "You did." So that's when I knew I was in the right place, and I just really have loved teaching ever since.
The next story comes from Katie Minky of My Classy Adventures. And Katie teaches fifth grade math and English language arts. And she says, "My students are very sweet, but we all know how the time before Halloween can get chaotic. I'm all set to dive into some spooky Halloween tales with my students who were writing spooky narratives when out of nowhere, one kid starts humming Jingle Bells. And guess what? The whole class joins in, and suddenly we're in the middle of a full blown Christmas Carol concert. I'm standing there like, wait, did I miss a memo or something? It's Halloween tomorrow, not December. But these kids, they're like, why wait for December when we can have Christmas now? I couldn't argue with that logic. So from that day on, it's been Christmas in my classroom, no matter what season it is. Math problems? Yep, with the side of carols. Science experiments? You bet there's a festive melody playing in the background. My classroom turned into a holiday paradise, and I'm loving every minute of it. So there we are humming Winter Wonderland while tackling assignments. Who knew a spontaneous Christmas choir could make the school year so much more fun? It's like I've got my own little slice of holiday magic right in the classroom.
Hi, my name's Amanda, and I want to share a story that personally reminds me as to why the work that we do as teachers matters so much and really transcends beyond the academics that we are teaching. I was teaching fifth grade, and it was the end of the day, and I got a call from the office to send one of my students with all of her belongings up to the office. Now, this student was it was April, so it was towards the end of the school year, and she's a very quiet, kind of kept to herself student, but I did know that she lived alone with her mother. She was a single mom. And so things were always tighter for them. And, but she was a happy student and everything like that. So, I sent her up to the office and finished our school day. And when the day was over and I dismissed students, I went up to the office and saw she was sitting alone in the conference room. So I said, well, what's going on? Like, why did I send her up early if she's just going to sit up here? And that was when the receptionist told me that they had been contacted by social services and her mother had passed away during the day. Natural causes, but they were waiting for the social worker and aunt to get there. And so this little girl, fifth grade girl, was just kind of sitting in the conference room. So I went in there and sat down with her and just talked with her, just talking about all the things. And I just could tell she knew something was wrong. And it was just so hard to know that the student's world was just about to just crash all around her. And at the time, I was actually about 6 or 7 months pregnant with my first. And so obviously my emotions and my hormones were probably even more in overdrive, knowing what was about what we were about to let the student know. So, in came my principal, and I want to say our counselor. And it was kind of like everyone just kind of looked around, and I could just tell she needed to be told, but obviously nobody wants to break that news. And it just kind of hit me that, like, if somebody had to tell this little girl what was happening, it probably should be me, because at that point, who in that room could she trust, or did she trust and feel comfortable with the way she did with me, her fifth grade teacher that had had her almost the entire year? And I could just tell my principal, and it just, how do you navigate that situation? So I just kind of looked at him and let him know that I would. And in that moment, I did. I did something I never thought I would have to do as a teacher, and that was tell one of my students that her mother had passed in that day. And I just sat there, very pregnant, holding this fifth grade student, just sobbing her eyes out, knowing her whole world had changed. And in that moment, it completely changed me as well, because I had moved so much further beyond just being this girl's teacher. I probably will always be in her memory because of what happened there. And I just wanted so much to just sit there and hold her and make everything okay for her, knowing that I just couldn't. And so the social services came. They finally were able to get a hold of a family member. Her aunt came, and her aunt actually ended up being quite wonderful. She was so great the rest of the year in corresponding with me, wanting to make sure that this student got to have her yearbook, got to have all the things and wonderful experiences that she would get to have her fifth grade year, especially because our students moved to the middle school after that. That was their last year at the elementary school. And so that little girl, though, she so amazed me, because she took some time off. They didn't send her to school right away, but she came back. And actually, by the end of the year, she won an award for resiliency, because she came every day and just kept plugging away, even though her whole world changed. And I was so proud of her in so many ways, and so amazed at her resiliency. And then, at the end of the year, she went on to middle school and everything like that. So I often think of her, as many of us do, some of those ones, like, how is she doing now? But in that moment, it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do as a teacher. And it actually had nothing to do with the fact that I was with actual teaching. And I hope that student always, when she thinks of me as a person that was there for her in that moment, because I think of her all the time, especially when I look at my now kindergarten daughter and think about that day. So that story for me is so powerful, and just realizing that every day we show up for our students and we teach them all the things, right? We're teaching them decimals or addition or how to read and comprehend, but we also show up for them because who knows what we need to show up for them on any given day for. It might just be for the academics, but it might be for something so much more. So there's such power in what we do, in being that person that they can count on no matter what life has to throw at them.
Hi, my name is Debbie Scambato. The name of my store is Teaching with a Vision. I just retired in June, but I really want to share one special teaching moment. Several years ago, I was teaching fifth grade social studies, and the lesson that we taught was on the three branches of government. Well, we focused on the legislative branch, and we divided our class into senators and House of Representatives. And we went through the process of how a bill becomes a law. My fifth grade colleague and I both did the same lesson. So we asked the kids to come up with possible topics that they could create to transform a bill into a law. They came up with things such as seatbelts on buses, less homework, but the one that really stuck was the important need for guidance counselors. Back then, we didn't have guidance counselors like we do today. So we had a local senator come in who explained the legislative branch, the process. Then he invited us on his local cable show. We went on his show. From there, it was put into the paper. The children also attended a school committee meeting and they presented their need for guidance counselors. Well, the school ended that year and we thought, wow, this was a great lesson. But then I got a call in June from a local senator asking us to fly some of our students to Washington, D.C. to attend a Children's Bill of Rights. My fifth grade colleague and I raised enough money and we flew 20 parents and their children to Washington, D.C. Well, we attended the rally, and this is the moment I want to talk about. One special boy spoke at this Children's Bill of Rights, and he told about how his parents were divorced and he strongly needed a guidance counselor or someone to talk to. It made me realize how powerful those simple lessons within the walls of our classroom could transcend into real world teachable moments.
Hey teachers, this is Ashley from Learning with Miss LeGros, and my classroom story I have for you comes from my very first year of teaching, and it might be considered funny to some or may just be sadly plain old relatable to others. I was on my prep period as a fresh fourth grade teacher, and my students were in PE class. The gym was right across from my classroom, and they had a substitute teacher that day. So I'm in the middle of grading papers. The substitute teacher runs into my classroom. "Can I borrow your phone to call the office?" I said, "Yeah, but is everything okay? You have my class right now." She nodded her head slowly and said, "There's been an accident." I finished grading the paper I was on and then curiously walked across the hallway to the gym because as an upper elementary teacher, I feel like it's not too common to run into an accident in class like our primary counterparts. I immediately run into the custodian. "Hey, what happened?" He looks at me, straight-faced, and says, "I was called for a cleanup in here, and I looked on the floor and thought I saw a candy bar. I looked closer, and I don't think it was a candy bar." Turns out, one of my students had a bit of an accident and was wearing loose-legged pants, and while running laps in gym class, it just fell out. Happy holidays, and here's your reminder to take a second look if you think you see a candy bar on your floor.
This next story comes from Laura Hurley of Reading by Heart, and she is a reading interventionist to older readers. She says that she's been wondering, why do I work so hard to entice my kids to learn to love to read? What is it that I believe books can do for kids? Let me tell you a true story that helped me find the answer to my question. And here's Laura.
Jenica dragged into the reading room one late November day, as usual. Now in fifth grade, her reading progress seemed to be stalled at second grade chapter books. She was reading Junie B. Jones still. She almost never read at home. She came to class every day still reading the same page she left off on the day before. I'd tried everything for 3 years to motivate her. She came to school in raggedy clothes and unkempt hair. Family members were in jail. She had only a few friends, other girls whose home lives were also abusive and neglectful. She'd recently begun to wear her ragged, dirty, and mismatched clothes pulled over her shoulder in a suggestive way. The staff was worried she was becoming a candidate for early pregnancies. Her test scores refused to budge. I was at a loss. Until the day Jenica sheepishly flashed her warm, eager smile as she gave up what she'd been hiding under her coat, under her battered Junie B. Jones book. "Ah, busted. Might as well fess up," her grin suggested as she showed what she had hidden. "I've been reading this At home, just because I wanted to, she apologized as she handed over the large, thick book she'd been clutching. Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul. You've been reading this at home? I queried. Yes, she answered, but only because I wanted to. I promise I won't bring it again, her tone suggested. Wow, cool. Just because you wanted to? I answered with a smile. Uh-huh, it's really good. I have all 3 Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul books. All 3, huh? That's cool. That could keep you busy for a while, I grinned. She looked at me. I think you should read this Chicken Soup book here, at home, and everywhere else. That's what reading's for, because you want to, because you enjoy it, because the book you're reading speaks to you. I'm not going to worry if these books aren't at your reading level, and it doesn't matter that they don't have quizzes. During the next month, Jenica went home every night and read 60 or more pages because she couldn't help herself. This student that I hadn't been able to convince to read 60 easy, short, and simple pages in 2 weeks was now devouring 60 difficult pages each evening. She finished all 3 Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul books in a very short time. I searched for more. 9 Chicken Soup books, and a month later, she'd completed the year's reading goal, only halfway through the year. We went to the principal's office to celebrate. I've been reading Chicken Soup for the Soul books, she told him as we stood in his office. I've read 9 already. They're really good. What do you like about these books? He asked. I learned stuff, she replied. Like what? What stuff have you learned? He probed. She answered, clearly and simply and without hesitation. Her answer took my breath away. I learned there's a reason to live. I can't think of a single more important thing to learn, anywhere, at any time, for any person. I want Jenica to learn to read for and from and of correctly. I want her to know how to tackle gigantic words she encounters. I continue to work diligently to help her master these skills. But more than anything else, I want this vibrant, battered, soulful young girl to know there's a reason for her to live. That's what reading can do for kids.
Hey y'all, my name is Rebecca Benai and my TPT store is Shalom Scholars. I am a 4th grade teacher in North Texas, and I wanted to tell a quick story about how being a teacher is not just about the academics and teaching. I had a student last year in my 4th grade class who really struggled with confidence. He struggled with work ethic, and he comes from an immigrant family where both of his parents work almost all the time, and so he's home alone sometimes, and his older siblings are also constantly working. So he just doesn't really have anyone at home who is taking care of him in the same way that some other students are used to. His parents were absolutely taking care of him, but they had been dealt cards where they had to work all the time, and he needed to pick up some of the chores at home and just take care of himself a little bit. And it was hard for him, and this child needed a lot more attention. Anyway, this child was severely overweight, and every day his snacks were chips. His snacks were he would drink soda, and he was getting to the point where he felt very insecure about himself, even as a 10-year-old. And whenever they would walk up the stairs, because we had a 2-floor school, but he would walk up the stairs, he would actually move to the left. Everybody's walking in a line on the right. He would move out to the left-hand side because he didn't want anybody to look at him from behind. He was worried if his pants were going to fall, if just somebody was going to make fun of him. And it was heartbreaking to see. And it's hard because I couldn't control so much what his lunches were, even though I really did try. But at the end of the year, I asked him, and we just had a very close class last year, but I asked him for a favor, and this was after a year-long effort of developing a really good relationship with him where he trusted me, he felt safe, he felt loved and welcomed. And at the end of the year, the last day of school, I made him promise me that he would go for a walk every single day for at least 20 minutes, even if his parents couldn't, but just to go for a walk for 20 minutes a day, because that's something we battled with all year, that he would just go home and he would just play on his phone from 4 o'clock till 10 p.m. and no physical activity, nothing else to do, just eat in his room. And fast forward to the beginning of this year in August, Meet the Teacher Night, this boy comes running into my room with the biggest smile on his face and his mom right behind him. And I've only seen Mom a handful of times because of the language barrier, and she just worked all the time. But he comes running into my room, and he lost 15 pounds, and he was happier and he looked healthy. And he came running in and said, "Miss Benai, look!" And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, you look amazing. You look so healthy. I'm so proud of you. And his mom had tears in her eyes and gave me a big hug and just said, "Miss Benai, I just wanted to thank you so much for convincing him to take care of himself and to walk." And he walked every single day, and he lost 15 pounds. And this had nothing to do with academics. This had nothing to do with work ethic. This had really nothing to do with anything that you would think teaching is part of, other than teachers caring for their students, caring about their health, and building relationships to the point where you can talk about things outside of academics. And for me, it was a big deal because this child just needed someone to give him a wake-up call. And whether it was my job or not, I felt that I was in a position to help him and motivate him. And seeing him that Meet the Teacher Night this year, and with Mom giving me that big hug, it just made me realize how big of an impact teachers can have outside of the academic world, in just changing a child's life with as small as weight loss, and for their health, and his confidence went up. So that's my story. Thank you so much.
When it came time for me to choose my own story to tell, I decided that I didn't want to detail a single event, but rather I wanted to describe a journey. My journey as a teacher began when I was in fourth grade. My favorite teacher of all time was my fourth grade teacher. I played school consistently until I was in about seventh grade. I went all the way through high school knowing I was going to be a teacher until I got to college. To cut out that part of the story, I took a different path, got a degree outside of the field of education, became a mom, quit working, and then decided I had to live out my lifelong dream of becoming a teacher. So I went back to school while subbing in my local district. At the time, my oldest son was in kindergarten and my youngest son was still in preschool. When I was hired to teach at the elementary school that I went to as a kid, I was ecstatic. I even got to work alongside that same favorite fourth grade teacher I mentioned earlier because she was the math facilitator at that time. From that point, all the little stories come together to form my journey in education. From my very first day as a nervous, new fifth grade teacher who was also mom to a kindergartner and a second grader, when the principal who believed in me enough to place me in that position took time out of her very busy first day of school schedule to go and check on my boys in their classrooms and come to my classroom on the other side of the building and let me know how they were doing, I don't know that she will ever know how much that meant to me. And all of the friendships that I made with my co-teachers and administrators, the times when I told my classes stories from my life and they literally sat and listened and laughed for 20 minutes straight. The time when my own son, as my fifth grade math student, used his classroom reward money to buy a pie a teacher in the face coupon and spent it on his poor mom in front of the whole school. The times when I was asked to take on leadership roles within my school building that I never would have thought I would be considered for. The laughs, the tears, the long days, the long nights. Every bit of my time in the classroom shaped my identity as a teacher. I will always consider myself as a teacher, even though I am not working in a traditional classroom setting. All of the experiences, good and bad, molded me and brought me to where I am today, striving to make an impact on the world through teachers and students, striving to leave my mark on education, and continuing to learn along the way. And that wraps up this very long episode. If you have stayed with us until the end, please know that I appreciate you more than you know. And I hope that the stories that you heard from all of these wonderful teachers brought a smile to your face and maybe a little tug on your heart. And hopefully, hearing these stories will inspire you to be the teacher you know you can be, that you want to be, and that your students deserve. Have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I will see you next year.